It was supposed to be a moment of truth, a test to silence rumors, a test to bring peace. Instead, it tore a family apart. The envelope sat heavy on the kitchen table. What? Ordinary. But inside was a secret so devastating, it would change lives forever. A mother sat trembling, her fingers hovering just above the paper. Her husband paced behind her, anger in his eyes. And their teenage son, wide-eyed, silent, watched the scene unfold. The father slammed his fist on the table. "Open it," he demanded. The mother hesitated, her lips trembling. The room smelled of burnt coffee, bitter and sharp, forgotten hours ago. The ticking of the wall clock was the only sound. Finally, she tore it open. And then came the words that shattered everything. Probability of paternity, 0%. The room fell silent. The father froze, staring at the boy he had raised for 15 years. The boy whispered, his voice breaking, "Dad." But the man turned away, his face pale, his hands shaking, his world collapsing. That single test had just turned love into betrayal. Before the test, the Hendersons seemed like the perfect family. Mark Henderson, a respected contractor. Hardworking, tough, the kind of man who earned everything with sweat and grit. Karen Henderson, the devoted wife. Always present at school meetings, always smiling for the neighbors. And then there was Daniel, 15 years old. Quiet, smart, the boy who never gave his parents trouble. They lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood. White fences, fresh-cut lawns. The kind of place where secrets shouldn't exist. But beneath the smiles, tension brewed. Rumors whispered, a shadow from the past that Karen thought was buried forever. Until one argument pushed Mark over the edge. One night, fueled by suspicion and anger, Mark shouted, "He doesn't even look like me. I want the truth. I want a test." Karen begged him to stop. She swore there was nothing to hide. But deep inside, her heart, the words on the paper wouldn't fade. Probability of paternity, 0%. Mark's breathing grew heavy. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had raised Daniel as his own for 15 years. Every scraped knee, every birthday, every sleepless night. And now, he felt like a fool. Karen reached for him, her voice cracking. "Mark, please, listen to me. It's not what you think." But he yanked his arm away. His face twisted in rage. "Not what I think?" His voice thundered through the walls. "You lied to me. You let me believe." He turned toward Daniel. The boy's eyes glistened with tears, his small frame shaking as he whispered again. "I'm still me. I'm still your son." But those words cut deeper. Mark stormed out of the house, the slam of the door rattling the frames on the wall. The silence that followed was unbearable. Karen dropped to the floor, sobbing. Daniel sat frozen, his mind spinning. The only father he'd ever known had just walked away. Days turned into weeks. The neighborhood noticed the shouting, the missed work shifts, the late-night arguments. The once perfect Henderson home was crumbling from the inside out. Mark stopped coming home some nights. When he did, the house was tense. Silent dinners, doors slammed shut. Daniel trapped in the middle, feeling unwanted. But beneath all the anger, Mark wanted answers. And the truth about Daniel's father. Mark couldn't let it go. The betrayal burned inside him like fire. He started digging. Old photos, old letters, questioning old friends. And soon a name surfaced. A man Karen once knew before Mark. A man she swore she had cut ties with. A man with a reputation dark enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Karen insisted it was a mistake. She swore she hadn't seen him in years. But Mark saw the inconsistencies. The dates that didn't line up. The lies she couldn't keep straight. And then a new rumor emerged. That man wasn't just an old fling. He was someone with a violent past. Someone police had questioned in connection with crimes that were never solved. Could this man be Daniel's real father? Mark became obsessed. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was terrified. Because if the rumors were true, then his son might carry a bloodline connected to something. Mark's search led him down a road darker than he ever imagined. The man Karen had once known wasn't just an old boyfriend. His name was Richard Hale, a name buried in old police reports, whispered in bars, and feared by neighbors who remembered the past too well. Richard wasn't just violent. He was dangerous, linked to assaults, rumored to be connected to a missing persons case from years ago. A man with a smile that hid something cold and calculating. And now, Mark couldn't ignore the possibility. Was Richard Hale Daniel's real father? Mark confronted Karen again. This time his voice wasn't filled with rage, it was filled with fear. "Tell me the truth," he demanded. "Is he the father?" Karen's hands shook. Tears streamed down her face. She whispered something that made Mark's blood run cold. "It was one night. A mistake. I thought it was over. I prayed you'd never find out." Mark stumbled back. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with betrayal, fear, and the scent of Karen's tears. And in the middle of it all, Daniel, listening, his young face pale, his world spinning, his identity suddenly shattered. He wasn't just questioning if Mark was his father. He was questioning who he really was. Mark couldn't let it go. He reached out to old contacts, pulled police files, dug into Richard's history. And the deeper he looked, the darker it became. Richard wasn't just a suspect. He was a predator. Women had vanished around him. Violence followed him like a shadow. And the timeline? It matched. Daniel's birth lined up with the exact period Richard was still in the same city. Mark felt sick. If Richard was truly Daniel's father, then Daniel wasn't just carrying another man's blood. He was carrying a legacy of violence. But then came the twist no one expected. One night, Daniel found something hidden in Karen's closet. A box she never wanted anyone to open. Inside were letters, old photographs, and something worse, police documents Karen had secretly kept. They weren't just about Richard. They were about Daniel. A detective's note stood out. Possible child connected to ongoing case. Keep sealed until confirmation. Daniel froze. His hands trembled. The pages blurred through his tears. His entire life had been a lie. Not only was Mark not his father, but his real father might be a criminal tied to unsolved crimes. And his mother had known all along. Daniel confronted Karen that night, holding the papers in his hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" he cried. Karen's face turned pale. She reached for him, whispering, "I was trying to protect you. If you knew the truth, you'd never forgive me." Before Daniel could respond, headlights flashed across the window. A car pulled up outside. Mark wasn't expecting visitors. Karen wasn't either. Daniel peered through the curtains and froze. A man was standing by the car. Tall, broad shoulders. A face he had only seen in old photographs. Richard Hale. The Hendersons' secret was no longer hidden. The truth was standing right outside their home. And the question that haunted everyone was simple. What did Richard Hale want? Was he there to claim his son? To finish unfinished business? Or to silence the family before more secrets came out? As the headlights faded and footsteps crunched closer to the front door, Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about survival. The headlights faded. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Inside the Hendersons' home, fear spread like fire. Daniel stood frozen by the curtain, staring into the night. The man outside wasn't a stranger. It was the same face from the old photographs. The same man his mother swore was gone forever. Richard Hale. Karen's lips trembled. Her whole body shook. She whispered almost too softly to hear. "He found us." Mark clenched his fists. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He had faced betrayal before, but this was different. This was danger. Then came the sound. 3 sharp knocks. Slow, heavy, final. The family looked at one another. Silence pressed against the walls. Daniel whispered, "Mom, what does he want?" Karen closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Mark opened the door. His voice rough. "What are you doing here?" Richard stood tall. His smile cold. His eyes sharp like broken glass. "You already know," he said. "I'm here for what's mine." His gaze shifted past Mark, landing on Daniel. Daniel's stomach dropped. His knees weakened. For the first time in his life, he was staring at the man who might be his real father. And it didn't feel right. Mark blocked the doorway. "You don't belong here. Leave before I call the police." Richard chuckled. The sound was low, mocking. "The police? They already know me. They couldn't prove a thing back then. And they won't now." Karen's voice cracked from behind. "Richard, please, don't do this. Don't bring him into this." Richard's smile widened. Too late. He deserves to know the truth. Richard stepped forward. His presence filled the doorway. He looked at Daniel. His voice calm, almost gentle. "Your whole life you've been lied to. He's not your father." He pointed at Mark. "I am." Daniel's heart raced. His hands trembled. But deep down, something felt wrong. Richard continued. "You've got my blood, my strength, my fire. You're mine, son." Mark snapped back. "He's nothing like you." But Richard wasn't finished. His eyes burned as he leaned closer. "You don't even know the half of it. The truth is bigger than a test. The truth is in his birth records. The truth is what your wife never told you." Karen gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. She staggered backward as if the walls themselves were caving in. Daniel turned to her. "Mom, what's he talking about?" Her silence was louder than words. Karen finally broke down, her voice trembling. It wasn't just one night. It wasn't just a mistake. Richard was different, dangerous. And when I got pregnant, I didn't know who to trust. I thought staying silent would protect you, Daniel. Her tears fell heavy. But Richard wasn't just after me. He wanted you. From the very beginning. Daniel's throat closed. His chest ached. "You mean he wanted custody? To raise me?" Karen shook her head violently. "No, not love. Not fatherhood. Richard wanted control. He wanted to shape you. To make you like him." Richard's laugh cut through the air like a knife. "And what's so wrong with that? Look at me. So, respected. He could have had all that." Mark shouted. "You're a criminal, a coward, and you'll never touch him." But Richard's grin didn't fade. "Tell him the rest, Karen. Tell him the truth about why I disappeared. Tell him what you did." Karen's sobs grew louder. Her words broke between gasps. "The police never caught Richard because I made a deal. I gave them information, enough to lock him away. But the case collapsed. Evidence vanished. He walked free." Her body shook as she spoke. "And when he threatened me, I ran. I begged Mark to marry me. To protect me. To protect Daniel. That's why I stayed silent all these years." Daniel's world spun. His mother's fear. His father's rage. His real father's smirk. Richard's voice dropped low. "And now, I'm back. And this time, nobody's keeping me from my son." Mark lunged forward, shoving Richard back. "You're not taking him." The two men clashed at the doorway. Fists, shouts. The sound of flesh hitting flesh echoed through the quiet street. Daniel screamed. Karen begged them to stop. Finally, Mark landed a heavy punch that sent Richard stumbling into the yard. Sirens wailed in the distance. A neighbor must have called. Richard straightened, blood dripping from his lip. His eyes burned with fury. "This isn't over," he spat. "You can't hide him forever." He turned and walked into the darkness. The night swallowed him whole. The police arrived minutes later. Questions, reports, promises of patrols. But Karen knew better. Richard wasn't gone. Not really. That night, Daniel lay awake in his room. His mind replayed every word, every revelation, every fear. If Richard was really his father, what did that make him? Was he doomed to repeat Richard's sins? Or could he choose his own path? Mark stood outside Daniel's door, listening. His heart heavy, but his love unshaken. Finally, he whispered through the wood, "You're my son. No matter what the papers say, no matter what he says, you're mine." Tears rolled down Daniel's cheeks. For the first time that night, he let himself believe it. Weeks passed. The family stayed cautious, locking doors, watching shadows. But slowly, healing began. Mark and Daniel rebuilt their bond, stronger than before. Not through blood, but through choice, through loyalty, through love. Karen sought counseling, finally facing the trauma she had buried for years. She told Daniel everything: the mistakes, the fear, the survival. And for the first time, she found peace in honesty. And Daniel? He made a decision. He wasn't Richard's son. Not in the ways that mattered. He wasn't defined by DNA or by a man's crimes. He was defined by the love that raised him. One evening, as the sun set behind the Henderson home, Daniel looked at his parents. Mark's rough hands, Karen's tired smile. Their love, scarred but unbroken. And he said, with certainty, "I know who I am. And it's not him. It's us." Mark pulled him close. Karen held them both. For the first time in months, the house felt whole again. The test had broken them, but the truth had rebuilt them stronger. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or on the streets. They're fought within families, within hearts. And sometimes the strongest bond isn't written in blood. It's written in love. This was the story of betrayal, truth, and redemption. But what about Richard Hale? He vanished again, leaving only questions in the dark. And maybe that's the real fear, not knowing when or if he'll return. If you were Daniel, would you want to meet Richard again, face to face? Or would you walk away forever? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Dark Justice Files for more gripping stories. And watch our next video, where the truth is always darker than it seems.